And we're back, and as promised, George Steinbrenner joins us. And before you came into the booth, George, I was making the point, and this is in no way to absolve you of all blame for all situations through your whole career, but I think it's at a point now where people expect things of you, and fairly pedestrian comments, fairly pedestrian actions draw unusual reactions just because it's George Steinbrenner. There is no way, after Wayne Tollison boots a ground ball, if he plays for anybody else, that a television director takes a shot of that owner in his booth.
Well, that's true. But you know, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And that's been the case for a number of years. But I think it's something that in certain ways I ask for, and I have to be able to handle it. That's all. You don't get much privacy at a ball game, though.
You cannot be happy the way your team has been performing in the last couple of days, let alone since the All-Star break.
I always loved this town, but I've had a very lousy time in Chicago yesterday and today.
Eddie Eidorf.
Yeah. He has not been a good host.
Isn't he one of those that a couple of years ago you called one of the cats and jammer kids?
Yeah, and now he and Reinsdorfer probably would see like my closest friends in baseball.
Here's the 0-1 to Claudel, a ball and a strike. I wonder if the FCC's fairness doctrine applies to baseball owners.
Yeah, but you can talk about umpires now. I suppose you read that yesterday. You're allowed to say things about them now.
Yeah, I saw that, the Dallas Parks lawsuit, and the umpire vindicating. You say it's part of Americans' venerated tradition.
That's right. Exactly.
Get on umpires.
Right. That's right. And it is. It's part of the ball game. But it did help to have the Supreme Court Appeals Court in New York say so.
Breaking ball is slapped to short. Guillen is going to have to hurry to get Claudel Washington, and he does by half a step.
That is some shortstop, this Guillen. Gee, what he does to us.
Wasn't there a deal discussed about a year or so ago, Guillen for Pasqua?
No, I don't think they ever felt that they wanted to trade Guillen. There was no Pasqua for Guillen. I'd love to have him approach me again about this shortstop, though. He just kills us. He's just offensive defense.
George, some people from the San Diego Padres organization thought he wasn't fast enough and didn't have a good enough throwing arm to play shortstop, but they didn't realize the great feel he has for that position.
He's got a sixth sense out there, Tony, and he's got to be one of the best shortstops in the game today, I think. I don't know. You're a great shortstop. You ought to know.
Mattingly has singled twice. What about the possibility of acquiring one of two White Sox pitchers, Bannister or Dotson?
Well, we've talked. We've been talking about it with them, and we'll continue to talk, I assume, right up to the deadline. And something could happen, something might not happen. I don't know. So far, you got to give Trout a little more time. The next outing will tell on Trout whether we made a good deal or not there. I don't, so far he hasn't done that much. But
Mattingly is 3 for 3.
After the pitch, Neil Allen looks into the dugout. He fell behind Chun Otadani, and it was a little fastball, a BP fastball, as they call it, batting practice, right down the middle of the plate. And then he looked in the dugout. I don't know if that was a sign that he might be tiring. How much does ball club miss Willie Randolph, who's been so strong for so many years?
You know, Willie Randolph has had such a year, and he's been such a steady. He's one of those consistent players. Jack Brickhouse and I were talking about the importance of having consistent ball players on your team. That's exemplified by Willie Randolph, I think, Tony.
Are you upset with him for playing in the All-Star game?
No, he wanted to do it. I'm upset with the fact that I think our team, Tony, in the last week has been a little preoccupied with the All-Star game and having so many starters and with the home run record and a few other things, and I think we're making mental errors out here the last 3 or 4 ball games that have no part in my scheme as far as baseball is concerned.
What about this guy? You've actually tossed some words of praise his way this season. He told Marv Albert before the game he can't really react favorably to that because he wouldn't let himself have a negative reaction to the criticism in the past.
Well, he can react any way he wants. That doesn't bother me. I give credit when I think it's due, and he certainly is entitled to it this year for the job he did when we had Mattingly and Henderson out of the lineup. He just was awesome.
There's a high hopper. Guillen will try and turn 2. To Manrique for 1, and they get it. The inning went by quickly, and we'll ask George Steinbrenner to stay in the bottom half of the 5th. It's still 2-1 Chicago. And we bring you another edition of Baseball Remembers. George Steinbrenner has joined us in the booth at Comiskey Park. Bob Costas along with Tony Kubek. Mr. Steinbrenner, how many games have you attended this year? Much has been made of you cutting back.
Yeah, not as many. I've been busy in other things, and I think I've only seen about a dozen games. That's about all so far. I hope to see more in August and September because I think that's when this thing is going to be settled, this American League race. I think August and September are the key to the American League East, and I don't think right now it's going to be settled, who pulls ahead or who's behind too. But when you get to those dog days in August and you get to September, that's what's going to determine how your pitching staff holds up and whether you have injuries. We've had the more injuries. They talk about other teams' injuries. Bob, we've had more injuries than any team in baseball. Any team. And here Toronto, one of our main contenders, hasn't had hardly any.
Maybe any team in the American League. I guess the Mets and the Cardinals, especially with their pitching staffs being hit the way they have, might dispute it in the National League.
Well, I'll bet you we've had as many disabled day list days as any team in the league.
Are you personally less volatile? Do you feel you are a less volatile man now than maybe 2-3 years ago?
No, I don't think so. I think it appears that way, but maybe less volatile on the outside. But inside, I'm burning up when my guys aren't performing mentally.
Donnie Hill whacks that one past Tommy John, who's upset with himself for not fielding it.
One of those things that they feared about Tommy John at his age and his lack of mobility now, a sinker ball where you get a lot of balls hit back, they fear that he would get hit by a pitch, and he comes very, or a batted ball, he comes very close right there. Grass slowed it down, he reached for it, was by him.
Between them, in less than 5 innings, these clubs have 14 hits, 3 walks. There's been a hit batter. Tolleson made an error for the Yankees, and it's all added up thus far to just 3 runs total. 2-1 Sox. Baines has struck out and reached on that Tolleson error, and he takes a ball. What about Glenn Hubbard? You're going to see Atlanta in the Hall of Fame game Monday at Cooperstown.
I don't think so. They're looking for past one. I don't think there's any chance of that. Meacham's played good second base for us. You can't complain. He gave us a little offense with that bunt today, but he hasn't made many miscues out there since he's been in second.
He seems more relaxed at second base than shortstop, and of course you're not quite as involved at second and short, and it seems like he's been able to relax a little bit more.
Well, your old pal Clete Boyer has been working with our minor league infielders, and he says that he thinks Meacham can be a good second baseman in the major leagues.
Clete's one of the best teachers in the game. He helped Ricky Henderson with base stealing. He did an outstanding job coaching third base for the Oakland A's and Billy Martin.
Here's the 2-1. 3 balls and a strike to Baines. Earlier this year, you offered kind of a lukewarm evaluation of Lou Piniella. Said he was doing a pretty good job. Where do you think he ranks among major league managers?
Well, you can't say that a man in his second year is one of the great managers in the American League. That's the question that was asked of me. I think on balance he's done a good job. What's going to tell is what he does in August and September when the gut-wrenching time comes, when you got to dig down deep. That's when we'll see just how good a job he does. It's too early to say one way or another, but on balance so far he's got his team in first place.
The runner goes. Baines swings and misses. Salas's throw does not get Donnie Hill.
Tommy John is upset. He does not feel that the stolen bases today against him have been his fault. And we have talked about Salas and his release not being very quick. Tommy John again keeping the ball down. Look at that. Salas is still in his crouch and the ball has hit his glove. I'm sure they've worked with him to try and quicken up the release. We've got Baines up, a left-handed hitter, so Salas had to throw over the top, but he didn't really come out of that crouch going towards second base before the ball hit his glove. Didn't get into action soon enough. I think Tommy's tired. That complete game the last time out, and the heat, and they've had somebody warming up.
Now the 3-2 pitch. And he got him. Ball strike 3 on the outside corner. It's the second time he's fanned Baines today. 1 of 4 strikeouts for TJ.
How do you explain to Tommy John, Tony, coming back at his age and doing what he's done this year?
You know, we talked about this before he got here. I think this limited strike zone that has helped the hitters has helped Tommy John. It's such a low strike zone now, and he's a low ball pitcher, so what he does was, and most hitters are low ball hitters now, unlike 20 years ago, I think he throws low below the knees, and he plays on these low ball hitters, and they swing at bad pitches.
Yeah, that must be it then.
Calderon lofts one to left, and Henderson makes the catch.
He's awfully smart. I mean, most hitters off Tommy John, they find him so attractive to try and swing at that they swing at so many bad pitches. And he's smart enough to work the umpires and the hitters.
Yeah, I think he is.
Let me ask you a question that may have legal ramifications, and I know it's tough.
Okay.
But we know you can handle it.
Okay.
Bob Cotts has assured me. During the offseason, you've got a chance to get Jack Morris without giving up any players for maybe $1 million, $1.5 million. You pass. This is all in regard to the alleged collusion. And yet now you get a Trout We give up Scheid, Wilkins, 2 good prospects, and Tewksbury pitching today, and inherit perhaps a $3 to $5 million contract. How can anybody make sense of something like this?
Well, we got
no responsibility.
Well, we got help on the contract from the Cubs. Okay. We got help on the contract. That was one thing.
You gave up 3 players, though.
Yeah, we gave up 3 players who, if we felt if Trout did the job for us, we didn't need one of them, and that was Bob Tewksbury, and he'll have a chance to pitch it for the Cubs. He's pitched once already. And but at the time, don't forget, I had Willie Randolph sitting out there asking for $1.3 million. I had a arbitration going with Mattingly that I knew I was going to lose at $1.8 million, and I had Ron Guidry out there asking for $1.5 million. So if I'd had those guys signed, I would have. I couldn't, I could have operated a little differently, perhaps.
All right, next year.
Now,
a guy like Cal Ripken Jr. is going to be out there, and you need a shortstop with no disrespect intended toward Tollison. Would you go after Ripken?
Well, I'm going to have to think pretty seriously about it, I'll tell you that. If I had known that Guidry was not going to sign with me, we were sure. We were up to the last minute. We thought we had him. Very last minute. I would have taken Morris. I'd have gone after him. But don't forget, the whole thing was kind of like a carnival.
We'll come back with George Steinbrenner. Walker is caught looking. John has equaled his season high with 5 strikeouts, and through 5, it remains. White Sox take a 2-1 lead into the 6th. George, you wanted to finish up on.
Well, what I was saying was, the whole thing was like a carnival. Dick Moss is a very sharp, smart young man and smart businessman, and he was playing one against the other, and they'd come into your thing and say, we want $1.8 million, and you got 2 hours to decide. I wouldn't make that kind of a decision in business, and I wouldn't make it probably in baseball either.
How can you expect a reasonable person, though, and I'm not just talking about the Yankees, I'm talking about the baseball business in general, to believe that there isn't some sort of collusion going on? All reasonable people applaud fiscal sanity.
Well, I agree.
Not giving 240 hitters $600,000 guaranteed contracts. But it seems when the Dodgers are desperate for outfielders and they take a complete pass on Tim Raines and won't offer him the same amount of money that his previous team will offer, it seems like the owners are saying, well, we got burned on some Edsels, so we'll never again sign a Rolls Royce. What a play by Manrique to take care of Pasqua as we go to the 6th.
Freddie's had a solid defensive game today, hasn't he?
That second baseman there has a great arm. That double play, that one where it was so close, I doubt that any other combination could have made it but get into the second baseman.
Well, Manrique basically a shortstop. That's how he was trained in the Toronto Blue Jays organization. He brings that arm along with him to second base.
Yep.
So
well, let me say this. We signed Ward this year. He was a free agent. Everybody said, well, he doesn't really count. He doesn't really count. He's been one of the reasons we're in first place. He's a heck of a player, and a lot of guys would like to have him.
But Texas announced its intention not to re-sign
Well,
him.
if he couldn't sign within that, but there are other people out there trying, too. But I must say this to you, that nobody in baseball has ever told me not to sign a player. They know better than that, and I've never asked anybody not to, and I don't intend to. I'm going to do what I think is best for my ball club. Now, I am in first place, albeit by only a game and a half, so, I'm willing to live with the team that I have here.
Paliarulo with the 9th Yankee hit. And
George,
1 run on 9 hits.
And I think 2 of Morris's losses came from the Yankees, as a matter of fact.
George, there's still got to be a lot of, I don't want to use the word fear, that's a strong word, regarding what the decision might be and what the power of the arbitrators might have. I mean, you've got to be very concerned. It's never happened before. You've got to be concerned about what the ruling might be and what kind of responsibility this guy has.
Well, I still say I went before him. I was there for several hours, and I was impressed with him. And I'll tell you something. We still have the right to run our own businesses. And what the people have to realize is if we pay continue to pay these outrageous salaries, we're going to pass that on in the price of a ticket. We're soon going to become like pro football and pro basketball, where you got to pay $25 a seat to see a game. Well, and we aren't there. We don't want to be there.
But not if you only pay it for the real quality. Not if you only pay it to the Tim Raineses and the Andre Dawsons and the Jack Morrises, and stop making foolish mistakes with middle and lower level play.
That's one of the things that has to be changed. But you also have to say, how much is enough? Is $2 million for playing a fun game like baseball? And it is a fun game. It's a kid's game. And for playing baseball, $2 million a year, I don't know whether that isn't too much.
Well, there's a short supply of players, though, George, and the demand is great, or used to be great among 26 teams. And supply and demand determines the price of tickets and determines the price of a ball player.
Face this fact. Here, take a Mattingly now. This year, he's making $1,875,000. He's been on the disabled list a couple times. I haven't had the performer with me a good deal. He was out in crucial series in Minnesota and down here, and he was out on the 15-day disabled list before that. There are a lot of things that you have to take into account in running your business. And I just don't want to see it passed on, the cost passed on to the consumer, to the ticket holder who wants to take his kids to see a game.
What about another issue? What specifically have the Yankees done in response to the post-Al Campanis atmosphere in baseball and the renewed emphasis as Salas pops this one back, Fisk for a look, runs out of room?
Well, let me say this.
Emphasis on trying to bring some sort of justice in the area of race to baseball.
Al Campanis spent 40-some years in baseball. In the 13 years I knew him, I never heard him say a bad word or a word that would be prejudiced to anybody. In the time I knew him, I can judge only by myself. Where I'm concerned, I don't really care where a man goes to church or the color of his skin. It's always going to be, is he qualified to do the job? Nobody is going to tell me I have to hire somebody if I don't think they can do the job. But on the other hand, they shouldn't try to tell me that there aren't good minority people out there capable of filling jobs. I won't buy that either. So I judge on the ability of the man, and that's what's made this country great and will continue to. And I just think that our problems in this country, if we deal with words and mismeanings and things, we're never going to get the real problem solved. And the real problems is getting education to the young people in this country, no matter what the color of their skin is. Make sure they have quality education, starting way down there.
Isn't the real problem in baseball not a blatant prejudice where anyone would knowingly say, here's a qualified black man or Hispanic, but I'm just not hiring him, but rather some sort of exclusion, even if it's unintentional, exclusion of minorities from the pool of those considered? A case of insensitivity rather than blatant racism. And so what's baseball going to do about correcting that and creating a pool not of tokens but of qualified individuals who can be evaluated just as white candidates?
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And I think baseball has taken bigger steps than any of the other professional sports as far as this year getting Dr. Edwards in, who has been very impressive, working with Calvin Hill and his group, and Mr. Alexander, who I've known for some time, former Secretary of the Army, to help us do what we can do and to get these qualified people interested. See?
Salas jammed, fouls it off. Neither Neil Allen nor Tommy John has been masterful. Allen has allowed 9 hits. John has allowed 6 rather, and 2 runs. The White Sox lead it 2-1.
You know, Bob, this might not be a problem just peculiar to baseball either. I don't see any major network presidents. I don't see any major sports writers. You know, it isn't something just peculiar to baseball. It's a problem that this nation has, and we've got to get about the business of starting down with our young people. That's where it's got to start.
Fisk will have room for this one, apparently, and makes the play.
He had a tough battle against a tough son. A little wind drifting the ball away from the Yankees really helped out.
He just keeps going, doesn't he?
Oh, man, they finished him off 4 or 5 years ago. Neil Allen's been helped out the last 3 innings prior to this one by Yankee double plays with a lot of men on base. Now, Allen makes a good high riding fastball to Salas, who tried to pull it to the hole and couldn't get the bat around.
It is definitely true, just to conclude your earlier point, that the faces who cover the game, which is now coming under such criticism, are disproportionately white. There are too few black sportscasters, black sports writers, virtually none among the writers who cover the game. And that is part of the reason why this problem was not brought to national attention more insistently until Al Campanis blundered on Nightline and did it on national television.
George, while we have time, we're going to thank you for coming, but I got to ask you one question. There's a ways to go on this. There have been a couple more mental lapses on the behalf of your ball club, not driving in runs. You're in town. Are you going to schedule a meeting with the team or Mr. Pinella after this ball game?
No, that won't happen, Tony.
Is that a certainty?
You can bank that.
Okay.
You can bank that. It won't happen this trip. But if we keep playing with a lack of intensity that I've seen in Minnesota and here, pretty soon you may hear something.
Is Ricky Henderson a culprit specifically?
I'm not naming any names. That's the manager's job. He's got to do that at this point. But if we don't start to pick up and play like we're capable of playing, and the mental errors don't stop, then you'll hear from me. I can't help it. That's the way I am.
Yeah, but over 162 games, it's really impossible, even for a $2 million ball player, to maintain an intensity and play through little injuries all the time. It's not like football.
Well, I know you're right on that, but I still say you've got to do it, and you've got to do the best you can with it. And when you make the mental mistakes, you got to study why. You learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes in life. And I just want to see that intensity, and that's what got us in first place, and that's what will carry us through. Now, it's got to continue, that's all.
What's your biggest mistake, your biggest regret as Yankee owner?
Biggest regret? Well, I'd say one of them was letting Reggie Jackson go. I've made a lot of mistakes. But don't forget, in the last 10 years, we have won more games than anybody else in baseball, so we must have done a couple things right. Yeah, and I think Dick Hauser was a mistake because he was a great manager, and he proved it after he left us. So I've made a lot of mistakes, see.
How do you feel about the battle for New York versus the Mets, for the affections of New York baseball fans? The Mets outdrew you last year, admittedly a championship year for them, by about 500,000.
Yeah, they did, and that was a great year for them. But don't forget, their fans have been waiting a long time for it. And in the meantime, you know, people don't perceive the Bronx as safe as perhaps we'd like them to perceive it, and that's a problem. My parking around Yankee Stadium is a real problem.
Meacham pops out. This session of Meet the Press is concluded with our thanks to George Steinbrenner, and we'll be back to Comiskey Park